Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Inside the Cover Book Club. Every month we pick a book to read, but best of all, we get to interview and speak to the author of that book. This month's selection is perfect for the Halloween spirit. It's a ghost story. But it's not your normal ghost story. It's the kind of story that answers this question: can we find love in the afterlife? I'm your host, Gil Rolon, and my guest today is Marlo Berliner. And her book is titled The Ghost Chronicles. Actually, it's a series. She has Ghost Chronicles 1 and Ghost Chronicles 2. Today we're going to talk to her. But before we start the interview, let me tell you a little bit about Marlo and her accolades. Marlo is a multi-award-winning, best-selling author of the Ghost Chronicles series. Her first book won the New Jersey Romance Writers Golden Leaf Award for the best first book. She was named finalist in the National Indie Excellence Awards for Young Adult Fiction and received the Literary Classic Seal of Approval and was awarded a Bragg Medallion. She was named one of the best indie YA books we have seen in the past year from both self-publishers and small presses by Ippy Magazine for her first book, or rather her second book in the series, The Ghost Chronicles 2. And she's also a member of the Authors Guild and the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And she's also a former literary agent and at the Jennifer Literary Agency. So Marlo, welcome to the show. I want to say I love your book, and it spurred my imagination.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure the readers who are reading this book are going to want to know, tell us more about this story. What is it about? What's the core?
So it's about a young man who dies tragically through no fault of his own. A very young man at the cusp of, life just taking off. He's a senior in high school. He's going to play for a Big Ten school in the fall. So that moment in life when life should be just taking off, he gets the rug pulled out from under him. So it's that story almost ripped from the headlines of a young person who, dies tragically. But I decided to turn it into more of a hopeful story. When I first started writing the book, I knew I wanted to make it Michael's story and have it be about a young man stuck in the afterlife. But I wanted to do it a little differently than the 90s movie Ghost. I did not want to have him solving his murder or anything like that. But I wasn't quite sure where I was going with the story until I read the story of a girl who died tragically at the Angel of the Sea in Cape May, which is a famous bed and breakfast down there.
Yeah, tell us more about that. You told me how this inspired you to tell this story.
Yes, so I was, the original inspiration for the story was something from my own life. I was almost killed in a car accident when I was 17 through no fault of my own. And I think that's kind of where the idea first began, of that what if. What if the unthinkable had happened? What would it be like to be stuck as a ghost? And from there, I wound up staying with my husband at the Angel of the Sea in Cape May, and happened to be in the lobby one morning, and there were books, and one of the books was Cape May Ghost Stories. So imagine my surprise when I'm thumbing through it. And at this point, I was about a quarter of the way through writing this book. And like I said, I wasn't quite sure where I was going with the story yet. I knew what I didn't want to do, but I did not know exactly where I wanted to take the story. I had some ideas, but it was still just very much in its infancy. So anyway, we were in the lobby, and I pick up this book of Cape May Ghost Stories, and lo and behold, there's a story in there about a girl by the name of Sarah Brown, who in the late 1960s fell to her death while the building was under renovation. And she was about the same age as my character, 19. So immediately I thought, and it just seemed like such a sad story. She was trying to go to church. She was trying to do the right thing, but she had left her keys back at work, and she was locked out of her room. So she tried to take matters into her own hands and shimmy along a ledge to get in through a window. but a screen popped off and she wound up tumbling. So after reading this story, I turned to my husband and I said, oh my goodness, I know what's going to happen now. My ghost is going to meet her ghost, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to fall in love in the afterlife. And I always kind of knew I wanted it to be a story of great hope about, you know, someone like that who's lost, a story of great hope for anyone who's lost someone tragically, particularly someone young.
Definitely.
That was always a theme in my mind.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and it's a great story concept. And you told me her first book and second book are out, the Ghost Chronicles and the Ghost Chronicles 2. And you've had many people come to your book signings and tell you about ghost stories. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I always get the same question asked at all of my signings. Do you believe in ghosts? So I like to say, hey, I keep an open mind, a very open mind, and I probably lean now towards wholeheartedly believing because there's some things that have happened to me personally. But yeah, people are always, I say I keep an open mind because people are always coming up to me, telling me their ghost stories. And these are people from all walks of life, men, women, young, old, who, and from all credible backgrounds. I mean, I've had a police chief from retired police chief from a town in New Jersey tell me his ghost story. I've had an assemblyman from New Jersey tell me his ghost story. I've had a senator tell me his ghost story. I've had doctors, I mean, you name it, lawyers, people come up and tell me their ghost stories. Everybody's got one. Everybody has something that either happened to them personally or happened to someone they feel is quite credible, like their sister or their brother or their mother. And so after hearing all these stories, you know, you got to believe there's a thread of truth in there somewhere.
Yep.
It's just, you know, and it makes for great story fodder. I think it's that question that we all have. We all think we might know what happens when we die based on our own beliefs or faith even or whatever it is, but we don't know. No one can honestly say for sure because we haven't been there and back. I mean, you know, some people feel they have perhaps, but we don't have any proof really of what happened.
But there are so many stories that makes you think like, okay, what if, right?
Right. Right.
So I'd like to get the attention of those who are watching this podcast. If you have a ghost story, why don't you put it down in the comments? We would love to hear about it. Now, one of the things I love about your book is how you subtly explain the life of a ghost.
Yes.
The things they can do, the things they can't do, about their ability to connect with the living.
Right.
And that's something, I was actually watching a podcast, and this medium was talking about that, because they asked her, how can you get in touch with the afterlife? They said, how could you do that when they're not physically alive?
Right.
And she mentioned that we're all energy, and the things that you connect with is the energy of that person who passed away.
Right.
And that goes in line with many traditional and historical teachings about faith and spirituality.
Right.
In fact, one famous philosopher, he said, we think that we are bodies that have spiritual experiences. But he says, no, I think we're more spiritual beings that have bodily experiences.
Right, right.
So tell me about how your thought process to explain some of those things you'd like to highlight in your book.
Well, from the beginning, I tried to put myself in the shoes of a ghost. Again, what would it be like if we were trapped in the afterlife as a ghost and did not know where to go, what to do? Kind of like the 90s movie Ghost. If you think back to that movie, in that way it's similar. He has to learn how to move an object. He has to learn how to communicate through a medium. But again, I wanted to forge my own path too. One of the things that most ghost stories do are they tell the story from the point of view of the living. I wanted to tell the story from the point of view of the ghost. How would you feel if you were thrust into this situation and had no idea where to go, why you were stuck, what to do. And I really tried to, for instance, I have a tiny little bit of a scene where he's on the boardwalk. I don't want to give too much away, but he's on the boardwalk down the shore, and he says, you know, what will happen if I do take a picture with this girl? You know, someone's taking a picture with, you know, a girl and her friends. And so I wanted to turn it on its ear and say, what does the ghost think in that moment? Are they thinking they might appear on that film? Are they, you know, trying to, you know, that kind of thing. So I just immediately wanted to do things from that perspective, you know. And I think what fed into that too was at the same time I began the Ghost Chronicles, when I first got the idea, my son and I were reading the Harry Potter books, and in the second book, Chamber of Secrets, there's a chapter in there called the Death Day Party, and it's about the ghosts in the Hogwarts castle and what they're doing. You know, what does their day-to-day look like? And they're having, instead of a birthday party, they're having a death day party for one of their own, one of the ghosts. And, you know, it's about what they're eating and what kind of music they're dancing to. So those all just spurred my imagination. What would a ghost do? What would their daily routine look like? Are they, what we consider haunting, are they just having playful fun because they're so bored and they don't know what else to do? And they're just reaching out, trying to communicate, trying to let us know in some small way, hey, I'm still here. I don't know why, but I'm still here. And, you know, come on, talk to me, communicate with me. I want you to know I'm here. So, and I think that can be very, that's a very believable angle, I think. So that's kind of where the whole story began. And then, of course, there's more adventures that my ghosts have. They kind of get around.
Yep, and that's the part of the story that I loved. It made it fun, made it interesting, and it spurred the imagination to say, wow, you know, that kind of makes me think about these experiences either I've seen or heard about. Maybe that was a ghost doing this or that.
Right, exactly. So I tried to pull in some of that, some of those things that I think are part of the canon of ghost lore. But then I also tried to pull in some new things, you know, about ghosts. And I wanted a lot of emotion to come through on the page. Those are two things that definitely are me. If you're describing me, I'm a storyteller with a huge imagination, and I'm a very emotional person. You can ask my family. I will cry at a commercial sometimes, you know, if it's a real tearjerker commercial or something. But so I wanted to really have that strong emotion come through on the page. Like when he first sees her up on the balcony, I wanted that on purpose to be a very Romeo and Juliet moment where he is just so, you know, his breath is taken away by, you know, this beautiful girl. And wouldn't we want that for our loved ones? If someone has to be stuck in the afterlife and they're a ghost, it kind of provides, I wanted the book, I always knew this it was going to be part of the theme once I heard Sarah's story, is that's what solidified the theme for me, is I wanted it to be that story of maybe everything we didn't get to do in this life happens for us on the other side. Not that life is over, but it just continues perhaps in a different way. So, you know, he meets the ghost. So it's, you know, one ghost falling in love with another ghost because he never got to finish his life, never got to get married, you know, life never went that far, you know, because he died at 19. So that's, you know, that was kind of what, that's when the story really, it started to almost write itself, you know, and then my imagination did come into play, the scenes in Boston and Philly and all the different places they go. I think it's a very spontaneous book, and it's because those ideas came to me very spontaneously. I would, for instance, see a commercial about, it was probably this time of year around Halloween, there was a commercial for Eastern State Penitentiary, because I think they have like a Halloween walkthrough that's scary. And immediately I knew I wanted a scene to take place there, you know, where he would go and meet some historical ghosts and things like that. And in the second book, there's a scene at Coconut Grove in Boston where there was a famous fire. And the tragedy that happened at that place, I immediately knew I wanted him to somehow experience that. But again, I don't want to give too much away. But a lot of imagination went into it for sure.
And I think you give also hope. Like you said, I've had losses in my life, and one of the thoughts I've had is, I hope if there is an afterlife,
Right.
that they're getting a second chance, or they're getting to fulfill their dreams. So, I am, as an author myself, when I write a book, there's usually like a core lesson that's driving me to tell the story. So what would you say you want your readers to learn about life from reading your series?
Well, I think through this character, they'll feel very strongly what he figures out on the other side, which is cherish life. It's absolutely precious. At one point, his mentor kind of asks him that question: if you could say one thing to your living self, if you could go back and say something to yourself, what would you say? And it comes to him immediately: cherish life. It's absolutely precious. We only realize what we have once it's gone. And then the other theme is, and this goes into how he falls in love with the other ghost, is true love is an immortal force. It transcends this life, the next life. Love can happen anywhere, anytime, any place, even in the afterlife. So that's another one of the famous lines from the book.
Yes, and you did a beautiful job telling those stories and creating the images and the emotions to not only give us hope for the future, but be able to appreciate the present.
Exactly. It's like a double-edged sword. Appreciate the present, but be hopeful that there's something else beyond our experience here. I think I would love to believe that's what most people want, is something comes after this. Eternal reward, whatever we picture in our minds, something comes after this. This isn't just all there is. So that really becomes a big theme in the books, particularly in the second book. Again, I don't want to give too much away.
Well, we thank you so much. The story's amazing, and we want to tell all the listeners, go out, buy this series. You're going to love it. If you like a ghost story, you love a love story, you just love to be entertained and inspired, definitely get these books. But now, why don't you tell us about any updates about this book and your future projects?
Sure. So right now I'm currently finishing up the third book, so the Ghost Chronicles will be a trilogy when it's all finished. It is currently being considered for TV and film, something I'm very excited about. I am a former literary agent, so I kind of have those connections. So I'm really trying hard to make that happen, and I think we're getting a little close. But I, again, can't say too much about that either.
Right.
And then I am writing some other books. I'm kind of trying to branch off into adult mystery thriller and suspense. So I've got some other projects on the burner. At any one time, I probably have 10 books going. I just need time to finish them all. Yes.
So where can people look for you? On your website or your
Yes, my website
media?
is the same as my name, marloberliner.com. And I'm going to be appearing at the Angel of the Sea in December. I always sign at the Angel of the Sea, which, the cover is the Angel of the Sea. And it was inspired by that haunting there. It's a beautiful romantic bed and breakfast, and they do candlelight house tours at Christmas time. All the bed and breakfasts, well, not all of them, but a lot of them in Cape May, New Jersey, they open them up to show to the public. So I will be sitting at the Angel of the Sea in the parlor like I do every year since the books came out. The owners are very, very supportive of the books. They always have been since day one. The Stanton family, got to give them a shout out. Very wonderful people. Teresa Stanton and her sons. But yeah, so I'll be there December 2nd and the 16th, signing and selling the books. And the other great, yeah, just if people can connect with me on my website. I have a newsletter they can sign up for. It's right on my website.
Very good. We want to thank you so much for being our guest
Thank you for
today.
having me. Thank you for having me.
And I, again, encourage everyone to get her books, the Ghost Chronicles, and definitely write down your impressions and your ideas that you get from the book in our comment section. And if you love this format that we have, definitely sign up, subscribe, and like our channel. And I'd like to say some final words. I was inspired by this book to really appreciate the present moment. You know, we hear about death every day. And one of the things we have to accept is that life and death go together. And we have to ask ourselves, are we going to choose to become negative about our life, or are we going to see the positive aspects of life? We have to value the time we have with our loved ones, because we never know when we might lose them. And so we really want to make each day our best, as if it is our last. And we want to also plan to show love to those we have, the ones we're together with now in the present, and hope that maybe in the future we can find love in the afterlife. So thank you for viewing the show, and that's it for today. So have a great one. This summer.